I've been asked to kind of talk about how we've had success and engaging students. We've had success from all sorts of levels of students, not just the pre-AP, not just the GT students, but all levels of students at my school. And I was able to actually collect data through multiple ways. And so just a little bit about me. I'm in my 13th year of education. I've taught just about everything out there in middle school. I've taught Spanish, math, science, social studies, both regular, pre-AP, special education. I've done it being an inclusion teacher. I've been the main teacher. I've done it all. But this next year, I'm going to be actually an instructional coach at a high school. They saw how much impact I had at my campus, and they wanted me to see if I can bring it to their high school. And a lot of it's going to come from Quizlet. And this is my third year to really be using Quizlet and incorporating it into the classroom. So kind of what I'm going to talk about today is how I discovered it, the benefits, how we incorporate it into the classroom, because that's very important, the data that we collected from it, and some success stories. And of course, we're going to wrap it up real quick with a few more tips. So to start off, 3 years ago, I was a special education teacher. I was a co-teacher in a classroom. And I'm going to talk about these two twins for a while. They are pretty much the reason why I got hooked onto Quizlet. So just give a quick background information. These students are severely challenged in school. They are basically nonverbal. They have so many difficulties in learning, and they're supposed to be in a resource setting, but we only had an inclusion setting. So they're already behind the curve. Well, I tried to find any way possible. So I tried paper. I tried different programs. I've tried Jeopardy. I've tried all these things, and nothing worked. It wasn't until I found Quizlet that it truly helped these two students become successful. And I'll go more into their story later, but this is the basic thing that happened, was that there was many smiles, tears, and thankfulness from my students. The parents have called me, emailed me, told our team. They said multiple times, this is the first time their students has ever been successful in any subject at any school. And not only did it help them in school, but it also helped them with, or in my class, but it helped them in all subjects at school.
Hey, Michael, I don't know if you have slides right now, but we're just seeing your video just as an FYI.
Oh, I do have slides. I'm sorry.
No worries. This is an awesome story, though. I love hearing it.
And I have it projected on my screen.
If you hit the share button.
Let me see here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all.
I might have done something wrong.
No problem. If you see a share button, and then you can pick the screen to share.
Oh man, I don't know where it went. I'm so sorry. There it is. Share. I apologize about this.
Awesome. There we go.
Okay, so now can we see it?
Yes, you're all good.
All right. So just to back up just for a second, that's me and my family. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background of who I am. Like I was saying, that Quizlet is one of the reasons why my school has been so successful. So some of the benefits that we found was that when you give the students access to the study sets, especially at the beginning of the unit, you incorporate it into your classroom, and you really keep referring back to it. You make it part of your lessons. The students will start to get it and start doing it on their own. I love the fact that you can use any device. And so we have plenty of devices on campus. Students have their own, and we just have that ability to get on and study at any time, which has really made this impact. I love the audio function, because these two girls, some of them that I'm going to be talking about, they have difficulty in reading, so the audio function. So all these things go together and really have helped, made my job easier, life easier, and our school would not be the same without it. So this is a little bit of how we do it. We look at the backwards planning method. We look at the test that we're going to give or the unit assessment, and we start building a unit outline. From this outline, we get the main facts. And so this is another tool we use. And this is where I create a lot of my study sets from. So I'll take a fact or two or use all of them, incorporate in different kinds, and I'll start to change them into questions. So they're seeing the Quizlet on the unit organizer, and they're also seeing the information on Quizlet. We're using it in class all the time. So they're seeing it, and this repetition is what is really helping. So another thing we do in class is that we use QR codes, and we also print out the study set. We do have a handful of students that do not like the online way of studying. They want paper and pencil, or they might not have access to internet at home. And so we will post this in the classroom, and they can take it. This QR code actually links it to the study set. So if the students are done with their work, they just go over, get a device, or use their own, and they can study from there. No downtime. So this is really incorporated. We also have when the test is coming up, and so the students are seeing it, they're reminded of it all the time. And this is one reason why it's really helped. Another reason is I have a website. I created this website for my department. I have all 3 grade levels. I have all the notes. And then I have a section for Quizlets. The reason this is important is because the students, the parents, everybody knows where the information is. This way, there are no more excuses. If the students say, well, I didn't have time to study, well, the information's there. Because we created this 3 years ago, all we're doing is updating it. And so one of my students came up with this a few years ago, that if there's a will, there's a way. If there's a Quizlet, there's an A. I love that quote, and we put it on our website. And with that, these students are going here all the time, and they're copying the study sets into their own username, and they're studying them. They know how to get to them. If they can't find it on theirs and they're on a different device, they always know where our website is. And so it's really been impactful to have a place where it's all housed together. So talking about incorporating to the classroom, when we we do Quizlet live before taking the test. We always do this. The students know it's coming, so they even study ahead of time. One thing that is getting our kids excited, this is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, is getting their name put on the wall. What we would do is when they win at least 2 games, then they get their name on the wall. And this, towards the end of the year, it took about 5 or 6 games for them to really do it. So you can really tell that it's part of our class, part of our culture, and the students just love this. By the end of the year, the whole wall and even the ceiling, different places around the room are all full of students' names. So now I'm going to get into the data part. So I found Quizlet Live about December of about 3 years ago. And that's when we started using it, and that's when we started having a growth. But it wasn't until the following year that I truly put it into place to where it was implemented with all 3 grade levels from day one. We have benchmarks every 9 weeks, and each benchmark gets progressively harder to where it leads up to our STAR test. So for our first benchmark, this is kind of my baseline data. Our students weren't totally sold into Quizlet yet, and you can see by the scores that our school was just, it's a little bit better than the district in different grade levels. And not all grade levels were using Quizlet at this time. They were kind of on and off. But it wasn't until the next benchmark where we started seeing the results. This is when we really pushed Quizlets before each test. And we did so well in some of the areas that our school district actually came to us and asked if we cheated. They thought we were giving answers And so we started separating from everybody else. They came to us, asked what we're doing, and they really did accuse us of cheating and giving answers away. When I showed them what we did, they were just blown away by the results, and that we didn't give answers, but it was the students on their own studying and really trying to get really good grades on this test. And our third benchmark, which is our closest one to our state test, the STAR test, you can see that we had 84% that would have passed the STAR test, 62% passed at 70 for 8th grade, and that just doesn't even compare to our district average. As you look at the other grades as well, it's impacted our entire school. So because of my website, I'm able to actually track how many people go to it per week, how many page views. And so I was able to pull this data. For the left is the second benchmark, the right is the third benchmark. And you can see that we have about 600 to 700 students at my school. And so we had about 2/3 of our students going to our website to look at Quizlet. Now, this doesn't include the numbers that save the information beforehand, because this only does 1 week at a time. But you can see that students are actively engaging and getting on, and you can tell that that made a huge difference in our scores. But our benchmarks doesn't really mean anything to our STAR test. So our state test, the reason I have all 4 subjects and not just social studies is to show that my school, you can tell that my school is in reading, we're just a little bit better than the next highest school. In math, we're just about even. Science, we're just a few points higher. But if you look at 8th grade social studies, you can see that we did 27% better than the district and like 18% better than the next highest school. And that next highest school has a lower lower amount of students that have difficulties or economically disadvantaged. And so those students should have done better, but our school did so much better than they did. So last year was our second full year of doing Quizlet every unit and really getting the students on this. So this is third year, second full year, a little more. And so these students have had it for 3 years. Once again, you can see that our scores were just about even all the way up. And science is actually using Quizlet a lot too, and you can tell that their numbers are better. But what's impressive about our 8th grade, I know it went down, but we had a brand new teacher. He's never taught the content before. I helped him to get started. He took it, ran with it, and we did so much better than our district, and we did better on our masters. So to get masters on our STAR test, you have to make 90% or higher, which that means about missing no more than 3 or 4 questions. So with that being said, we had 2 years ago, we had 33% get commended. Our district average was 16. So that alone shows that we had major growth. So that was not just for the lower population, but that was our higher population, and they're benefiting from it as well. But if you look at last year's for social studies in 2018, even though we had lower numbers passing the STAR test, we had higher percentage get commended. And so these students, which I want to talk about some stories, but they were competing against each other all the time to try to do better with each other. But you can also, the reason I put science on there as well is because you can see their major jump. Last year was their first year to really fully incorporate Quizlet into every unit. So they made a huge jump from 2017 to 2018. The teachers didn't change, they just added more things for them to use. So these students are making 90% or higher on the STAR test, which has over 50 questions and only missing a few, which is really impressive, which these 2 scores actually helped us to become distinguished, which means that we're in the top 10 schools in our 40 like schools that when we compare ourselves. Now, one thing that Quizlet does is builds confidence. Quizlet has made it possible for all students to have a chance at being successful. Students do not know how to study. Students don't know what to study. They just take all the information and they just try to do their best. They look over it. Well, when we started implementing it, we could tell that students started figuring out how to study. Many students came to me and said they can't do this. They've never been successful. They don't want to be here. But once we really got them engaged, showing that they can do it, they started believing themselves. When they started believing in themselves, it didn't just impact them in social studies, but then it carried over to all other subjects. And so this, I know that Quizlet and some people might say that, well, giving them the answers or you're making study sets that are close to the test. It's not about trying to trick the students. It's trying to get them to learn. And by getting them to know what to study, how to study, this confidence that starts building, and it made huge changes on our campus. So another key important role to this with student success is your engagement as a teacher, your implementation, and how you use it. We've had other schools in our district. My website's not private. I make it open and I allow anybody and everybody to use it. So other schools in my district have taken my website, they go on it, they pull out information, they give them the same stuff, but they don't incorporate it into their school like we do. They did not improve. It is when you truly get them engaged and you get the students to buy into Quizlet, that's when change really happens. Quizlets need to be done from the close to the beginning of the unit as possible. The more time you have for students to really take this information and learn it, then the more that they're going to be seeing it in class, and it's just really important for you to do that. You do need to build time into your lessons for Quizlet. You don't want to just have it say, hey, it's available, go do it on your own time. Make sure you really get the students to buy in. You give them time in class to do it. You try the different features. And another key component is to get parents on board. When the parents understand that they have a study set ready to go, they're going to get their students to do it. The parents, if they're on board, then your success is going to be greatly improved as well. So I have a success story from last year to this year. So the beginning of last year, a high-performing school district was struggling in 8th grade social studies. Through some contacts, they found out that I had success with social studies and using Quizlet, and they want to know how to do it. So I went over there, I gave them a small presentation, I showed them how to use it, how to build it, I gave them my information, and they ran with it. They took it, they made it their own, they had this passion and wanted to use it and be successful. They needed change, they needed something else. Well, they took the exact same STAR test, and they had 82% pass in 2017, and they jumped to 96% passing in 2018. So that right there just shows you how much impact it can have on a school as long as you really incorporate it and you have a passion to do it, not just handing it to them. So we do tutoring every year before the STAR test. And the first year we found Quizlet and Quizlet Live. It was towards the end of the school year before Quizlet Live came out. But we had about 50 students every day staying after school. About 30 of them a day were required to stay. The other 20 just decided to come and play and hang out and enjoy Quizlet and Quizlet Live. We had about 100 different students staying each week that they had to stay, but we had way more numbers than that every single week. My school did have the largest and most diverse population in the district, and we had the highest scores by 5% or so. We've always done well, but it made us give us that extra edge that first year. But we didn't really start doing these Quizlet sets until the end of the school year. In year two of Quizlet, but it was our first year of full implementation, we didn't have that many students needing to stay. We had certain requirements on certain tests. If they made below a certain grade, then they were required to stay. So because of having Quizlet sets available throughout the year, our students were studying more often. It was more repetitive. They could understand it. Once they saw certain key words, it just triggered their memory of it. We did not need to have that many people staying for tutoring. However, we still had many students wanting to stay to play Quizlet live. So last year was, or 2 years ago, excuse me, we had our greatest impact ever, which we were 27% greater than district average and about 29% better than the state average. And we became a distinguished campus, which is very hard to do. Only 4 schools in my district got it, and we were one of them because of social studies. Now, year 3, this is our second full year, full implementation. We only had about 5% of our students needing to stay. And those are the students that do not want to study, do not want to take the time and just really pay attention and get engaged in the class. If you're willing to participate and study on your own, then the students didn't have to stay. We didn't need them to stay. Our students had a higher success rate throughout the year. This year, we only had 16% better than district, and we will be distinguished again because our commended rate did go up of the students that made 90% or higher. So it has made a huge impact, and especially since this was a teacher that has never taught this content before, but had material, help, and everything else to get it involved. So I have a couple stories about specific students. I had a girl that was in a resource class the previous year. She was very shy, didn't want to really be engaged in the class. She didn't think she was smart. And so now they're in an inclusion setting, which means there's 2 teachers in the classroom and there's about 30, 35 students. The student struggled and she failed every single test. You could tell she was not enjoying school. She never smiled. She didn't want to be there, and she made excuses all the time to get out of class. Well, the other teacher and I took her aside. I stayed with her for tutoring. I showed her how to use Quizlet, how to get on, what to do, and just really worked with her. And it wasn't that long, but I worked with her, and through encouragement and the Quizlet, her grades started to improve. Then her confidence started building, and then she started making A's. So this is a special education student, supposed to be in resource classes, now making A's on test. And she not only started making A's, but now is leading discussions in small groups. So she's helping others to become successful because she's learning the material. So another student, I've had him for 2 years now. He's kind of a handful. He is a special education student in an inclusion setting. He did have some behavioral issues. He had a hard time focusing. But when I showed him how to use Quizlet, he would be engaged. He actually came to me and said, I know I can pass the test. I need you to help me. I got with him even more. I had him for science and social studies as a co-teacher, and he passed science and social studies STAR test because we had that information for them. Of course, we don't know what's going to be on the test, but we just had that material ready all year long and got with them. So we did have some students that were in the pre-AP, the GT students, that would start competing with each other. They would go back and forth. They would brag up, and they're best friends. So it wasn't like it was a negative thing, but they would go back and forth about who made the higher grade, who did the best on the matching or the quizzes that you could take through Quizlet. And so they went back and forth this entire year, making straight A's the whole year. Well, when it came to the STAR test, one of them made 100% on the STAR test, which we only had about 3 students out of our entire 8th grade do that. The other student made a 96, which means she missed about 1 or 2 questions on the STAR test. So both of these students were just fully engaged, and they didn't only just go on the unit that we are currently on. They started going ahead because I had everything available for them at the beginning of the year. So they started going ahead, and then they could make those connections of how one unit connected to the next. And so that made a huge impact. And I thought this was a funny story that I was hearing and seeing. I wasn't a part of this class, but there was a group of 6th grade boys that started competing about matching. They would race to see, as soon as the new unit came out, they would go on there and try to be the best, have the best time. Well, when somebody got the best time, somebody would beat them. And so each unit, they try to be on top until they got to a time that nobody can beat. So over the year, more and more students started joining this group. It was a pretty large group. And those students became very successful, making A's and B's all year long, getting more students engaged. And that wouldn't be there if we didn't have this information for them. So this is honestly my proudest moment as a teacher. So I told you about the two twins. They're nonverbal. They have very high learning they struggled. I had them for 3 years in a row. I had them in 6th grade. They made 20s on the test. I tried to help them out. That's with me reading the test to them. That's with me trying to rephrase questions. That's with me trying to do everything I can to help them. These are the two girls that got me hooked on a Quizlet, because the first time that we gave them Quizlet ahead of time, they went from 20s and 30s to making 50s. It's not passing, but they made gains. And that's really the first time that they've seen gains. Their parents have seen gains for them. They ended up making between 70s and 80s on their test by the end of the year. And that wouldn't be possible. Now, they never passed a STAR test. They never passed a state assessment. They haven't been successful. This is really hard for them. So I had them in 7th grade. When we started the beginning of school, they started to ask me to stop reading the test. They had their mom call me and tell me to stop. They want to do it on their own. They can do it. So what happened was, over the 6th grade year and their 7th grade year, they started to go home, get on Quizlet. If they didn't know something, they started researching it. And so they started going further into details. And so these girls were so engaged with Quizlet that they actually started to interact with others. So these are two basically nonverbal girls, and they are interacting with others. When we first started Quizlet Live, nobody wanted to be with them in the group. They're kind of just by themselves. But by the 7th grade year, everybody wanted them on their team because they knew the material. They could study the material. They can go deeper into it. And so it was funny to see that how students went from not really wanting them on their team to just begging for them to be on their team. And they won so many times. Their name was all over our room with those paws on the wall. It was amazing to see. Now it comes to 8th grade. They still haven't passed any STAR test up to this point. They continue to improve on social studies. They passed all their tests this entire year. They started doing better than most regular students because they took that time to study the material. Now, as their confidence started growing, which I talked about earlier, it started to affect them in other classes. So they started to ask, can we take our other test without any accommodations? They wanted to read it themselves. They wanted to do it themselves. So this was really the first time ever in 8 years of school that they were successful on their own. Nobody's giving them answers. Nobody's guiding them. They're doing it on their own. And other students started taking notice as well. It is amazing to see. What made this my proudest moment is that these two students were not supposed to do well. We were supposed to basically try to do our best, the best we can as teachers, but with the expectation that they're not going to do well, they're not going to pass. But the other teachers and I didn't give up on them. And every year, they did not come close to passing. Well, in 2018, last year, when they took the test, they passed not only math, science, and they passed social studies. And it wasn't just by barely passing, because you can tell if somebody's guessing or not. They passed it by enough questions to know that they truly knew the material. So when I see them in 6th grade and they're making 20s and 30s on tests, to 8th grade where they're passing 3 out of the 4 tested subjects, it's amazing, because these girls were not supposed to pass. They're not supposed to do well. So I got the mom to write me a note. And this is what she wrote to me. And she continually thanks me about how much Quizlet has helped them. Their confidence is growing. If they don't get 100 right away, they'll go back and do it until they do. These girls, you should see them and how they light up when they do so well, when we tell them how well they're doing. And their mom is continuing asking me and the other teacher that had them for 3 years to go to them to high school to help them out there, because they know that we can get them to be successful. So this truly is my proudest moment as a teacher, seeing these two girls that are not supposed to be successful become successful for the first time ever. So kind of wrapping things up, you really need to make sure that you incorporate Quizlet as part of your lesson. You cannot just go, here it is, it's here if you want it. You need to make it engage with the students. You have to make sure it's there, available. The students know how to get there, parents knows how to get there, and you give them time in class to really use it. If you can, have the study sets available as soon as possible. The more time the students have to see it, the more time they practice it, the more they're going to remember it. Especially if you have some downtime in class, you can always have the students go over and review. When you are doing Quizlet live, be engaged. When you're doing different activities with Quizlet, be engaged. If you're just sitting back and you're not really sold into it, the students aren't either. Finally, take risk. So after 3 years of doing Quizlet and Quizlet Live, our students were still enjoying it. They could see the benefits of it, but we needed to change it up. And so what I would do is try these different ways. I would make, I had sunglasses with little clothespins on it. I print out the Quizlet sets, and I played headbands game or heads up, whatever you want to call it, to where they were using it that way. Or I would play different variations, which there's great sessions coming up that have different variations on how to play Quizlet Live. Just go out there, take risk, make it part of your lessons. If something doesn't work, it doesn't work, just move on. Try to do something else. The students, when I asked them how they like it, they said, sometimes they would say, it's okay, but thank you for trying. Thank you for trying to make it better. Thank you for trying to do more things. When the students know that you're engaged in that relationship with them, that just helps them, Quizlet can make a huge impact on your campus. All schools right now in my district are trying to keep up to ours, and our biggest secret is how we use Quizlet. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and yes.
Yeah, that was amazing to hear. I know that's super heartwarming to hear about the impact that Quizlet has had in your classroom, Michael, and to hear those stories about, those specific students. Really awesome to hear. We have some time for Q&A, and I think we have some questions actually for you as well, Michael. I have got Laura here to help me out.
Hello. So Gina wanted to know how much time do you spend in class on Quizlet? So she said Quizlet Live at the beginning of the unit and then review day before the test. Do you use it as like a formative assessment tool? Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of when in a unit you integrate Quizlet into your lessons?
Sure. So our Quizlet sets are always available at the beginning of the unit. We make sure that it's available for our students. It's on the wall. This is what we do. We put the QR code, we put the study sets, everything there. When the students have downtime, that's when we say, hey, go over there and look at it. For the Quizlet Live aspect of it, we normally take a full day of playing Quizlet Live. And the first part of it is them taking the quiz, and they go through, and it's really eye-opening to some of them going, well, I either know the material or I don't. And then after seeing if they made we usually say 80% or higher on the test, then when most of the kids get there, then that's when we go into Quizlet Live and we play it. But we do that every unit before each test.
Great. Someone says, I'm a special education teacher digging Michael's info. I would like to follow him on Twitter and check out his website. Could you share that with us? Are you okay
Yes.
if we put that in the chat?
Oh, yes. You can put the website there. I can.
I think you might have, do you have the ability to see the chat box? If not, I can do it. Let's see.
Let's see.
Do you see the chat option in your sort of webinar tools?
Think. Did that just show up?
Yes.
So that is my website. And y'all can definitely email me if you have questions on how I use it. But that's the one great thing about having all those sets available at the beginning of the year. The next year, all you gotta do is just modify it as needed. Saves time.
Awesome. Great. So someone, Ilsa asked, as a resource teacher, I've also been successful in modifying lengthy science tests from the general classroom for my students. All of last year, all my students with learning disabilities received higher than 80% on each of their science tests on Quizlet. Oh, that's awesome, Ilsa. How has your special education department utilized this tool beyond just modifications of the general education exams? Have you guys used it in other ways?
We don't modify any of our tests.
Okay.
They take the regular tests like everybody else, and we just use it to help them engage and learn the material. And so we keep, like I said, once you incorporate them into the classroom, you start referring back to it often. The students start to have that repetitive review, and they start learning more.
Awesome. Let's see if there's any good questions that are specific for you, Michael. Oh, here's one. Do your students work individually or in groups?
Well, it depends on the activity. At first, when we did some of the quizzes, we did team up some of our special education students with the other students. But by the end of the year, every student had their own device. We had the capability of giving each one a MacBook or an iPad and someone to use their own phones, but they did it by themselves. Sometimes we might play games and have matching competitions or Quizlet Live tournaments, but it just depends.
Okay, and I have one more question for you. It says, you mentioned something about students acquiring badges after completing a Quizlet activity. Is there a badges option? Can you speak more about this? So I can answer from the Quizlet side that we don't provide the badges, but I've been to your classroom Mr. Sneed, so I know that you have your own sort of badge setup. Can you talk about what you do? Because I know your students get super competitive and they love receiving these badges, which are essentially just paper cutouts, correct?
Correct. It's
okay.
Our mascot's a bobcat, and so I just take a bobcat paw or I found a paw online, printed it out, and they just write their name on it. You can make your own badges. We did something else through another program for reviewing for the test as well. It had videos, and so if they finished the video, then they got a badge that we put outside on our hallway. So these badges, we just make them.
Great.
Is that all the questions?
Yeah, there's still questions coming in, but we're getting close to the end. I know we continue to get questions about sort of PD certificates and where you can review all these presentations. We will be posting them on YouTube. Not today, not tomorrow, if you want to edit them and make them sparkle. But you can you'll be able to review them, and we'll email out PD certificates at the end of tomorrow. So you'll be able to fill out how many hours you spent with us and learned and all the other stuff you need to fill out. Claire, any last words as we wrap up day one?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you once again to Michael, and thank you to everyone who presented today. It's been an amazing day. I've loved getting to hear about all the ways that teachers use Quizlet, from Michael's heartwarming story to Jessica's creative diagrams, Nathan's creative ideas in his classroom. I'm definitely always learning from all the teachers who use our site. So I hope everyone got some good tips that you guys can use in your classroom, and are looking forward to the day tomorrow. You're going to get some more tips into Quizlet Live, hear from our CEO about the future of Quizlet, and learn what's coming up next in Google Classroom, and more tips as well all about Quizlet. So we'll see you all back again tomorrow at the same time at 8 a.m. Pacific time and 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's going to be the same link that you used today. We'll email that out again tomorrow morning in case you've lost that email, but it's going to be the same way that you came in today. And we're really excited for tomorrow and look forward to you all joining us again. So have a good night, everyone, and thanks again.